Cross.
Good morning, America. Breaking overnight. Terrified passengers evacuated from a plane moments before takeoff, hands on their heads.
Everybody out. Everybody out. From the front. From the front.
A police team swoops in, arresting this man with suspicious items in his carry-on bag. The airport on lockdown, flights delayed, and the big question this morning, how did he get on that plane in the first place?
Donald Trump, the presidential hopeful, unleashing on Ben Carson overnight.
If you try and hit your mother over the head with a hammer, your poll numbers go up.
Carson still fighting back against those reports he embellished his life story. Trump is live this morning on GMA as the candidates gear up for tonight's high-stakes face-off.
Moment of impact, a wild end to a high-speed police chase. An officer fires his gun, trying to stop a stolen SUV ramming his car. The officer sent flying. How the hero cop still managed to make the arrest.
And free falling, a top skier making a sports documentary takes a terrible tumble while the cameras are rolling, cartwheeling more than 1,600 feet down a mountain. How an airbag helped him walk away.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
Did you hear that?
None of us were shocked. We're all okay.
Everyone's fine. Good morning, America. We have much to get to this morning. We've got, of course, the big debate tonight, and we want to take a look this morning inside the debate hall in Milwaukee. Things really heating up among the GOP rivals. Donald Trump pulling no punches last night, taking aim at Ben Carson, and Donald Trump's going to join us in just a bit.
Yeah, he had another big crowd last night laying the groundwork for tonight's debate. But we're going to begin with that overnight scare at Miami's airport. Passengers evacuated from a plane after a suspicious passenger made it through security. And flyers everywhere on edge right now after that apparent bombing in Egypt. ABC's David Curley starts us off from Reagan Airport. Good morning, David.
Morning, George. It was more than just one aircraft. At least 20 jetliners held because authorities apparently lost track of this suspicious bag and had to find it.
Passengers taken by surprise as Miami police board their plane.
Everybody out. Everybody out. From the front. From the front.
Just before takeoff, the American Airlines jet evacuated.
Front. Let's go. Quickly. Quickly.
Police ordering everyone on the jet bound for Barbados to put their hands on their heads.
Don't move.
One passenger taken into custody, who the FBI says got through security just before 5 p.m. with suspicious items in his carry-on bag.
The officer noticed the gentleman kind of not making eye contact and started fiddling with the bag, and that's when they kind of jumped all over him, put him in handcuffs and took him down, and then ordered all of us to get off the plane as fast as we could.
Hey, get off the plane and then have Bert come in with his team. Get on the ground.
The TSA telling ABC News the passenger is a dentist, and it was his dental equipment which triggered the alarm. At least 20 jets held, delayed, or diverted while the search for the bag was on.
But they can't even tell us if you're going to get where you're going to go.
Some 500 passengers affected until the bag and the passenger were actually found.
The man was released, George. There's no word whether he actually got to Barbados and whether or not he got his bag back or not.
But the question is, David, how did he get through security in the first place?
Yeah, one source is telling us, George, that TSA's screener saw something suspicious in the bag. It was to go to secondary checking, and apparently the second officer didn't realize that, released the bag, released the passenger. Innocently, the man went to his plane. TSA hasn't given us a specific reason why that second person didn't realize this was a suspicious bag that needed to be checked again.
But again, the man has been released now. Okay, David, thanks very much.
All right there, George. The race for president now, and the candidates facing off in tonight's big debate. Donald Trump and Ben Carson will be center stage again. A new poll shows they are neck and neck. Last night, Trump giving a preview of the attacks Carson may face, and Trump will join us live in a moment. But first, ABC's Tom Yamas is there in Milwaukee for tonight's showdown. Good morning, Tom.
Robin, good morning to you. That's right. The debate takes place tonight here at the Milwaukee Theater. And you're right. Trump spoke in front of a huge crowd last night, really putting the pressure on Dr. Ben Carson. But this morning, we've looked into the stories that Carson has been questioned about, and some of them are checking out.
Overnight, Donald Trump unleashing on Dr. Ben Carson and the new scrutiny over Carson's life story.
This is the only election in history where you're better off if you stab somebody.
Trump and Carson now neck and neck in the polls. The retired neurosurgeon forced to answer questions about his violent youth.
If you try and hit your mother over the head with a hammer, your poll numbers go up. A lot of weird things are happening. This is a strange election, isn't it?
Carson standing by the stories he wrote about in his autobiography and talks about on the campaign trail, like turning his life around as a young man after trying to stab a fellow teen. Carson's campaign pointing to an article in Parade magazine in 1997 where his mother corroborates the story, telling the reporter, "Oh, that really happened." And after the Wall Street Journal reported discrepancies in Carson's account of an incident at Yale where he said he was honored as the most honest student after a class hoax involving a bogus test, a fellow student who staged the hoax telling ABC News Carson was not lying, saying, quote, "I think he got it close to right."
I do not remember this level of scrutiny for one President Barack Obama when he was running. In fact, I remember just the opposite.
But as other candidates say this is all fair game, Carson finding some support from Senator Marco Rubio.
I know everything I need to know about Ben Carson. He came from a poor family with no advantages in life. He worked hard and became one of the world's most renowned neurosurgeons. That's all I need to know.
Now, the debate is tonight. It's going to be 2 hours. It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern. There's going to be 8 GOP candidates on the main stage. Governors Christie and Huckabee didn't make the main event because of low poll numbers. Now, the focus is the economy, but with so much going on with Dr. Carson, it's unclear how much policy they'll be able to squeeze in. George?
We will see. Okay, Tom, let's talk to Donald Trump right now. Mr. Trump, thank you for joining us by phone today. Sounds like you're ready to tee off on Ben Carson tonight.
No, not at all. We'll see what happens. It'll be loose and we'll be very flexible. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it'll be interesting.
As we've seen, you know, in Tom's piece right there, some of parts of Carson's story are starting to check out now. When I talked to him on Sunday, he said you jumped the gun on those stories, and that calls into question whether you're fit to be commander-in-chief. If he repeats that tonight, how will you respond?
Well, I'll just simply say, and I mean it to the bottom, you know, the case was made that he went after his mother with a hammer, and he wanted to hit his mother over the head with a hammer, that he stabbed somebody, that he hit somebody in the face with a lock. He smashed somebody's face with a lock, with a padlock, and other things. And I'm saying, and he's trying to justify this because he wants to be telling the truth, and he's trying to justify it. And then he said he's pathological. He's got a pathological temper or something. And he wrote that himself in the book. And, you know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on over here. You hit somebody in the face with a lock. You go after your mother with a hammer. You do all of these things, and you're trying to justify that, yes, you did them. And that's supposed to make you credible.
We heard the word.
And it's a very strange situation.
You heard the word hammer there several times in your answer. I want to ask you about an ABC News poll that just is out today. You and Ben Carson at the top of most polls right now, and you're both doing quite well with Republican voters, high favorability. But when it goes to the general election voters, he's doing much better than you. He's got a 50% favorability. You're only at 38, and 59% unfavorable for you. How do you explain that, and anything you can do about it?
Well, sure, you do a lot about it once you start running and once you start focusing on that. Zogby just came out with a poll where I'm at 30-17 against Ben, and you do a lot of things about it. And I beat Hillary head-to-head in numerous polls. So I think, you know, but that's a different group of folks. Right now I'm dealing with the Republicans.
And you're also dealing with China in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today. You say it's time to tell the truth on China, but critics say the policies you're calling for will spark a trade war that will backfire on the United States. How do you respond?
Well, you know, what's a trade war? We're losing $400 billion a year with China in terms of imbalance. They're killing us, and in every respect, and they're currency manipulators. What they're doing is they're beating us with their currency manipulation and other things. So when you say trade war, they've got a trade war against us. They beat us at every front. We have people that don't know what they're doing. We have people literally that have no clue. And if you look at what China is doing step by step by step, I mean, trade war, sure, you won't even have a trade war. China has taken so much money out of the United States, so many jobs, so much of our base, that trade war, I don't think you'll have one, frankly, because they can't afford a trade war.
We saw last week unemployment down to 5%. This is an debate about the economy tonight. Federal Reserve almost certain now to raise rates. Is that the right move?
It is the right move, but the unemployment is not 5%. The unemployment is probably close to 20%. If you look at all the people out there that want to get jobs that have given up, you're talking about unemployment that's actually close to 20%. The world is not happy. You know, you talked about my big crowd at the arena last night. It was in Illinois. It was unbelievable. Believe me, if real unemployment was at 5%, I wouldn't have had 10,000 people at that arena last night.
Finally, Mr. Trump, who else is in the hot seat tonight?
I think everybody. I mean, look, it's a contest. It's a very interesting set of characters. Everybody has a very different point of view, and I think it's going to be an interesting time tonight. I look forward to it.
We do too. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, George.
Let's talk to Matt Dowd about this. So how do you explain this? Donald Trump, Ben Carson holding on strong at the top of the polls right now. Anything can bring them down?
Well, I think what explains their strength is their authenticity. And so who they are, they feel genuine, their stories and all that. But actually, in the end, that's what ultimately could bring them down. If it bears out that their stories and what they stand for isn't authentic, the cracks would then drag them down immediately. The other thing I think they're going to have to prove tonight, especially, is that people can see them as commander-in-chief. They like them, they like their message, but there is a question about whether the voters can see them as commander-in-chief.
And will they get pressed for details on some of their policies tonight? What else are you watching for?
I'm watching for all the subplots. Will Jeb actually go after Marco Rubio in the course of this? Will Donald Trump and Ben Carson really engage in the midst of this? And I think Ted Cruz is in actually an interesting position tonight because I don't think he has an opportunity to bash the refs, the moderators tonight. So what will he do?
Well, there's some talk of Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush double teaming Marco Rubio.
Yeah, I think it would be a really mistake by Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz to go after Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is a young guy with a great story. I think they're better off letting the moderators do the work instead of them doing it.
Let's see what happens tonight. Matthew Dowd, thanks for being here. And later this week, I'll be heading to Washington for an exclusive interview with President Obama. We'll bring that to you Friday right here on GMA. Robin?
All right there, George. Major health news now. An important new study on blood pressure that can save lives, affecting at least 17 million Americans. ABC's Dr. Richard Besser is here, and these are dramatic findings, Rich.
Really dramatic. You know, the big question for people with high blood pressure has always been, if you're going to treat it, how low do you go? And so for people who are at high risk for heart disease, the target was always 140 or 150 for that top number. What they wanted to see here is what happens if you bring that all the way down to 120. So the researchers did a study. Half the people, they went for the current target of 140 and half down to 120. They studied 9,000 people. They were all over 50, no diabetes, and they were all at risk for for heart disease. They had to stop the study early because there was a 25% reduction in bad outcomes like heart attack, stroke, or deaths from heart disease.
Lowering it by 20 points. Medication is what led to that reduction.
Exactly.
Side effects. You know, when you talk about medication, so is the 20-point difference worth the side effects?
Well, there was a trade-off. So to get it down that low, on average, people had to be on 3 medications. To get it to the 140 level, it was 2 medications. And there was a slight increase in ER visits for a number of things. For low blood pressure, for fainting, though there was no difference in falls, and for kidney injuries. So there was a bit of a trade-off there.
So what are your recommendations?
Well, there are 17 million people who may benefit from that. That's a lot of people. Should talk to their doctor to see if the benefits outweigh the risks. But there are so many things that people can do to bring down their blood pressure without medication. So maintaining their weight, regular physical activity, making sure they're getting good sleep, keeping the salt out with those processed foods. Those things could take care of some of this or make it easier to control.
All of this is encouraging. All right, Rich, thank you very much. And Dr. Besser will be taking your questions throughout the morning. You can tweet him at Dr. Richard Besser or post your questions on GMA's Facebook page. We're going to turn now to that huge storm out west, hitting California and Nevada with snow, hail, rain, and it's moving east. Ginger, so many on the lookout for a blizzard this morning.
So many. You've got to see these numbers. But first, the San Francisco, California. We've got pictures of the thunderstorms that rolled through the Bay Area. That is the Golden Gate Bridge getting struck by lightning. You move to Nevada, where it came as heavy snow. And this same storm now digging into the west. We have winter weather advisories from Nevada up to Montana, into Colorado and Utah. And look at that blizzard warning and watch. Northeast Colorado, western Kansas, and Nebraska. That means Wind plus snow. It doesn't necessarily mean you get tons and tons of snow, but it does mean really bad travel conditions. And out front, potential for tornadoes, damaging wind, and of course that large hail, Des Moines to Peoria, back to St. Louis. All right, we'll have much more on this coming up in your nation's weather, but for now, back to Robin.
All right, Ginger, thank you. And now Amy has the morning's other top stories, beginning with big news at the University of Missouri.
That's right, Robin. The school football team there will resume practice today after the school's president resigned amid growing racial tension. The school's chancellor also says he will step aside from his position as well. Students and faculty had joined the football team's protest. The team threatened to boycott over how racial tensions were handled. So coming up at 7:30, we will talk to Jonathan Butler, the grad student who staged a hunger strike